Thanks podcast. Real conversations with men who've taken a few hits, kept showing up, and are creating a version of success that actually means something. I'm Coach Scotto, and this is for the blokes who are done pretending they've got it all figured out. Because let's be honest, none of us do. It's honest chats, no BS insights, and a reminder that you're not alone in the process of leveling up. Because when good men share their story, it reminds the rest of us what we're capable of and helps you break through when it counts. So whether you're grabbing a coffee, going for a walk, or lifting something heavy, let's link arms and get stuck in.
There we go.
All right, to kick things off, I'm here with a good mate who went from stand-up coffee to owning coffee shops. And I honestly came for the coffee and stayed for the community. And so I'm really excited to talk to you.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
So to kick it off, what does your mum think you do and what do you actually do?
Gosh, my mom is... the best part about owning a coffee shop, it's pretty obvious. And so the only cute thing I can say my mom does is she'll send a lot of people my way. And the majority of these octogenarians that'll come down, they'll like come in, they'll want to meet me. And they'll be like, I don't drink coffee, don't even like it, but your mom says I need to try yours. I'm like, you're going to hate it. Like, it's still coffee. And like the same thing will happen. They're like, I hear you make your own almond milk. I'm allergic to almonds, but I have to try it. I'm like, please don't. Please don't. I don't have an EpiPen. Like, I don't know how to. So my mom, it's more so she is just, I always call her, she's like a cake with too much sugar. Like, she just is so sweet, ready to support. And like the amount that when I first started Bear Coast, she would be the first ones to like it, share it on Facebook, all that kind of stuff. And I got teased by my contemporaries. They're like, the only one that likes your posts is your mom. I'm like, does your mom not like your posts? Because it's pretty rad. Like, it's a lot better to be able to have that. So that's what my mom thinks, at least.
So your mom was early on Instagram?
Yes and no. I think that it was one of those things, like all of us have done it, where it's like they'll ask about it and then we'll help them set up. And then my mom is more addicted to Instagram than anybody else I know, because that's like their only interaction. They don't understand.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law, she doesn't post anything. She just looks at everything. So it's even scarier. Yeah. It's a little scarier at times and stuff. Luckily, I got nothing to hide, but yeah, she was an Instagrammer. And now my mom, she just likes everything for sure.
That's very nice.
Yeah.
So I kind of led into it that you once were a comedian.
Yeah. Yes,
How did that lead into coffee?
It's not as interesting of a story as people think it is, but I was in Los Angeles and like I lived very close to what's called Sunset Junction in Silver Lake. And there's one of the first intelligentsias that ever opened in LA was right there. And so I was living in a big brick building, subletting from a friend who was traveling, and just would go there all the time for just writers meetings and whatnot. And it's, once you try good coffee, it's hard to go back. It's like the same thing with good beer, spirits, or anything else. It's like, oh, dang it, this tastes good. And this is going to cost so much more the rest of my life. And so I would just have all these writers meetings, and I wasn't a big drinker or anything like that. And so that was the thing that I would just let myself get into. And I just had friends that were also into good coffee. So we'd try different things. And I met my now wife and we were chatting, and she saw I was getting a little disillusioned with the stand-up career that I was in. It wasn't, I mean, if I was really funny, I'd still be doing stand-up. But it's like, so I was traveling around, I was making a living. She's like, what do you want to do when you actually, like, what will make you happy? And I was like, I can't wait to retire and just open a coffee shop. She's like, just look into that now. And so that's kind of how I got just a day job at Pete's while I was still traveling and doing stuff, and just loved it. I loved the community aspect of it, because whether or not you like Pete's coffee, like the experience is still the same, where you have an opportunity to be able to daily be in people's lives and daily check in on them and connect with them. And I love that. I came up with a tradition at the Pete's at which I worked, where like they were waiting for drinks. So I would put random trivia from Trivial Pursuit like on a card, and without I did it one day without asking my boss, and they kept doing it for about a decade after I was there. And it would just be a conversation starter and all that. It was just so fun. And to come from a place where you're a stand-up comedian and you're trying to be funny, and like your entire job is to make an entire group of strangers like you to be just connecting with people and serving them, it was like a breath of fresh air, and I loved it.
That makes me feel really bad, because the best I ever did as a barista would be write my number or a smiley face. on the cup.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I didn't get very creative with it.
No, you didn't. And it was a very select few that would get your name and your number on the cup.
Yeah.
So it doesn't give you the chance to connect with as many
The
people.
numbers weren't high.
Those are rookie numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would your 18-year-old self say if he came and met you today?
Huh. I think that's a humbling question. Because you and I have been friends long enough, you know that it's tough for me to look at the lens, look at my life without the lens of what else do I need to continue to do to be able to grow and to be able to achieve and whatnot. And I think that the honest truth, with humility aside, is that I think if my 18-year-old self saw my life right now, he would probably, with a little bit more profanity, say, "Holy crap. Your wife looks like that? Your kids do that? You have friends like this? And you have a company with this many people working, and the coffee does this, and you do that? Jeez, man, I thought we were going to be telling fart jokes for the rest of our life."
That was going to be the thing.
Yeah. And so I think the 18-year-old self, I think, would be a little surprised to be able to see a life that's a little less solipsistic, a little less a little less Jeff oriented. But I think that there would be a lot of just, wow, okay, there's more to learn than what I'm doing right now. Because I think there was a lot of self-focus that I had when I was 18, like all of us. And I think I've gotten to be able to turn that outward and see a lot more and do a lot more as a result. Yeah.
That's really cool. Speaking of a lot more to learn, you've said some big words today, and I've had to take note. I looked those up.
Wait, what did I say?
It started with octogenarian, and then we went downhill from there.
Yeah, and solipsistic and all those things. I know like 5 big words, and the fun part is, ask me to spell them, I won't be able to do it.
You don't need to spell anything.
No, not anymore.
As you have gone through the entrepreneur journey, was there a moment where you were able to stop and see with clarity, this is it?
What do you mean it?
Like, this makes sense. This is the right thing.
Yes and no. I think there's a book by Danny Meyer called Setting the Table. And he uses the metaphor of having a salt shaker in the middle of the table when a friend moves in. He's like, okay, where do you want it now? And he moves it back to the center of the table. And the whole thing was like, there will be things that move that salt shaker away from where you want it. And your job as an owner and as a manager is usually to reset that and tighten that up. And so that's his metaphor. I've explained it to my managers as, you are playing a guitar, and if every once in a while you got to tighten those strings to make sure that it's producing what you want it to produce. And I think as an entrepreneur, I get really bogged down with comparison, concern of the unknown. Problem solving has a tendency to make you look only at problems. And I think that the best times in which I can say I've had the veil pulled away and I've seen it is when I see the actual things that we sell and produce. And the reason why something like Bear Coast, because there's people out there probably, because coffee's subjective. The stuff we make can be amazing to some and horrible to others. I have a friend of mine who loves me, but will not drink my coffee because he loves Phil's. And no matter what, like, he will hide the bags at his house, but it's like he loves Phil's. But so with coffee being so subjective, how have we succeeded? And I'll take a step back and I'll have these conversations with people who've met at Bear Coast, who've come back and made their best friends at Bear Coast. Like, going to your wedding, like, I was like in tears because of the fact that it's just like, I could be like, there are some coffee companies that have made these men and women millionaires. I'm not there. And that's the comparison. We're like, what am I doing wrong? But then when I'm out in the desert to watch you and Lacey and see the friends that you've made at my cafe at the table that we had, as I was in debt and struggling with all those problems, I had that view of like, but look at this. Look at this. You can't buy community. You can use money to be able to facilitate opportunities. And I think that as an entrepreneur, there's a book also by Donald Miller. Donald Miller is a great author that's done a really great work of boiling down the questions you need to ask as an entrepreneur of like, what do you sell? Because it's not coffee. because of everything I've just said. Because my friend Tyler still spends money with us. And even though he doesn't drink our coffee, so what is it? And we sell community. We sell making sure we provide an opportunity for people to be known. Like babies need to be held. There's a scientific studies and like everybody knows if a baby's not held, they die. And it's so sad, but it's something that's written in the DNA of all of us as humans. Like you need connection. And so those moms that have newborns whose husbands work or husbands whose wives work and all they're doing is interacting with the baby all day, they can come into a coffee shop and have the one adult interaction that day. And that is life-giving. And so as an entrepreneur, I have those things that bring me back to the center of the table to remind me. And then, of course, having the tool belt to be able to understand I'm not done and that I need to be able to make sure to be able to tighten certain other things up to be successful. Money's not evil. Money's not bad. It's a fuel to be able to help us continue doing what we're doing, and you have to be responsible. But those moments are when I think I've seen it, if I interpret your question.
Yeah. I think that really highlights the journey of men and an entrepreneur, that there's so many layers to it. And that having known you for so long, it's hearing you say your 18-year-old self would actually be beyond proud, but the version of you now kind of struggles with it. And then when I look at it, at our wedding, the majority of the people, I think I even said it in the speech, the majority of the people I met through Bear Coast, or like, hey, come meet me at Bear Coast. Like there's just a common theme there. And I see that, but then for you, there's layers to get to seeing that. And I think through what I want to do with this podcast is highlight that for people, that it is important to get those moments of clarity, because otherwise you're just kind of lost in the noise.
That noise is exhausting too. I think that to be vulnerable, like the most debilitating portions of my career have been when I've been overwhelmed with not being enough, where it's like, I have not made enough money. We are not busy enough. Why is that shop over there busier than we are? Oh man, this is what my graphic, like it just, and it's not actual work. It is just this constant, because we get bombarded by comparison constantly with Instagram and with other peers and whatnot. And so you just will always see what they're doing that you're not. And it's exhausting. And it doesn't actually give you the energy to do what you need to do. Yeah. And so like, yeah.
Which I had a question written down, you've kind of already answered, is how often do you think, what the hell am I doing?
I do that more as a parent than I think I do as an entrepreneur now, because I'm about 13 years in to entrepreneur. I still can't even pronounce the word entrepreneur correctly, but to running a business. And so I can get back, I think that a lot, especially as we grow. So it went from a sole operation to then hiring staff. We were sourcing coffee from other people to then opening up locations and then roasting our own coffee and sourcing our own coffee and then now doing wholesale. So it's like every step as we expand into a new opportunity, there is that moment of jumping into that bigger pool of like, oh man, I do not know what I'm doing. And so I get that, but now as I get older, I can, even as catastrophes rise up, arguments with landlords rise up, I've gone through so many things that are similar that I can pause and be like, you didn't know how to do that, you figured it out. And now even with YouTube and whatnot, I'm like 98% of the problems that entrepreneurs struggle with can be found and solved with either ChatGPT or YouTube. So it's just an emotional thing that's usually preventing me from actually solving it.
Yeah. Again, that's a really good insight. Yeah. The answers are there. Yeah.
And I think it's also making sure that men specifically is like, well, look at what you've done so far. Most people didn't think that you'd be able to do that either. Right. So if this new thing it seems like that's going to be the thing that kills you, just look back at what you thought was going to kill you before.
Yeah. In that same frame, is there something specific of a belief or mindset you had to let go of? Or was it something where you had to redefine what success was?
Yes to both.
Okay.
As I was talking about your wedding, and as I look at these moments that I have with my children and my staff and these people I love and I care about, like being able to recognize, because I have enough friends that are wealthy in our area, you know, and you see them not have some of these things. And so what is success and what is wealth? And like I said, money isn't evil. It's something that helps, if you steward it properly, it helps fuel so many beautiful things. But making sure that you know that the actual success is being able to give opportunity for more of those moments. I had the most, like the richest I felt was the other night. My wife was working late because she's an entrepreneur too, because we are ridiculous.
Weren't busy enough.
Yeah, we weren't busy enough with 2 kids and a bunch of coffee shops. But I was by myself. My daughter's learning the ukulele at school, and so she took a break from being in their playroom, their kids' room, where they watch Minecraft videos and whatnot. My son's in there. My daughter goes into the main living room and just practices, and you hear her trying to be able to get some notes. And struggle with it, and then in about 5 minutes you just hear her finally get it and play the song, and there's just this pause, and I for some reason just knew it was going to be something special, and so I closed my laptop and I just listened, and I listened to her play, and I thought that was it. And then once she finishes, I just hear my son say, "Hey Maddie, that was really good." And it gets me emotional even thinking about it.
Yeah.
Like what opportunity I had to be able to be there to give them a life where they at least just feel free enough to support each other and stuff. So anyway, so when it comes to like the idea of wealth and success and stuff like that, I have to redefine it a lot.
Yeah.
And or at least just refocus it a lot. And then, but what was the other part of the question? I feel like
was there beliefs or mindsets you had to let go of?
Yeah. I think that yes, and there always will be. I think one of the biggest ones is I would always look at something as having an end goal specifically. And even if you do have a goal, that's just one goal amongst many. I think there's no actual finish line when it comes to our lives. You can look at death as even a finish line, but when it comes to when it comes to my beliefs and stuff like that, death isn't even the end. Like it's just like things keep going. And so when it comes to business and when it comes to the different steps and levels that your business will achieve, that will not be it. And eventually, like maybe you're going to work on selling it. Then after you sell it, what's next? It's like you're not done. I think there's 2 phrases that I remember having in some of the more stressful times in my life is, you're not done and it's going to be okay. And then the third one, very similarly, is like, what if it all works out? So being able to embrace those, and one of them was sent to me when you were watching a Theo Vaughn video, and it was specifically from you. It's like, he just literally said the phrase, it's going to be okay. Yeah. Even that thing that you're thinking about that's not going to be okay, it's going to be okay. Yeah. And then the other phrase of just like, you're just not done. Like if you're still reading this and doing this, like keep going. Like you're just not done. So those are mindsets that I've had to adjust.
I really love the way comedians, and you included, process things, and there's just moments of just way over the line jokes that break the tension, but because you're constantly looking at how to phrase words or look at a situation to tell it differently, make it funny, it leads into unique perspectives and thoughts and words that reframe situations and experiences that either make you laugh when you thought it was the worst thing, or give like a crazy insight that you're like, oh wow, I never thought of it. That was
okay. So that is one of my favorite things, because comedy is just it is, when I break it down, I had the birds and the bees talk with my kids. I had where'd the cat go when it died, and then I had also, I saw my daughter, very smart. She was starting to tease other kids. I was like, you're trying to be funny. And I get it. Yeah. Let's break down what humor actually is, and I'm going to teach you how to actually be funny. And so you have to be able to recognize patterns. That's one thing. You have to escalate patterns. But then it's also just rules of tension. Like all it is tension built up and then released with a lens that is jovial and inclusive, in contrast to frightening and scary. You build up tension in a movie like Alien, and then all of a sudden the alien pops out and everybody screams. You do the exact same thing, and then Will Ferrell jumps out in a bikini. Like all of a sudden it's completely alleviated and laughter ensues.
Right.
Both tension. Both completely like, ugh. Yeah. And so like even when it came to like the entrepreneur version of that, as I reframe, there was this challenge I had with the landlords at my Laguna location. Most expensive location I've ever, most challenging experience I've ever had. Landlords that end up just being extremely challenging. I don't want to badmouth them too much, but like they ran it like a business, and it came across with a lot of surprises, and it broke me at times. I didn't know how it was going to work. I was just despondent, and like I remember then after all the dust settles, and like I have friends whose families are battling cancer and who are going through some real trauma. I'm like, how do I let them know that, like, oh yes, but my lease was very difficult. Like it put it in perspective of like, that was just a lease. Like that's all it was. Yeah. It was challenging. It was a big deal to me. And if entrepreneurs are watching this, there will be moments that it's like you feel like you were in over your head, and that's where I was. But it's like I'm trying to like talk to a guy who's like, yeah, anyway, so my wife, she has breast cancer and I don't know how it's gonna go. I'm like, well, my common area maintenance fees went up by $1,000, so I know exactly how you feel.
I know exactly how you feel.
And being a comedian gives you the ability to laugh at yourself a little bit better. Just know that you're being ridiculous at times too. Yeah, I get it.
There's something in there of everyone's mountain is still their own mountain. And that's really hard to sit with, because if you compare, because you're a decent, compassionate person, and you look at someone else's problems, it makes you feel stupid and like you shouldn't be worrying about your problems. Mm-hmm. But they're still your problems. Mm-hmm. And there's a struggle that I see everyone go through as they try and expand and go for more of like, well, how can I be worried about this when someone else has something worse? Mm-hmm. That doesn't make your problem go away. Like if you went bankrupt, that's a big problem. Mm-hmm. That doesn't fix someone else's cancer. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, there's like remembering, it could be a lot worse. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that there's an answer there, but I think reminding people that we all have our own problems. And just because you have a problem that's smaller than someone else's doesn't mean it's not a problem. And it's okay to kind of sit and suffer with it for a little.
Yes, but just for a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think that just from my own experience, everybody's going to do their own thing. The seasons in which I have sat there and stared at the problem in front of me and let all my emotions be consumed in that problem, then that is the most debilitating and exhausting thing, because it's just dumping fuel into a fire, and it's just making it worse and more painful. It doesn't help anybody.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, and not always, like I would say, like you meet these people who have other problems that are completely out of their control, at least it just changes the mindset to be like, okay, I still have this problem, but I have now the ability to keep on moving. This past week I had a big event, and I had the ability to treat it like I have before, where it's just like, this is overwhelming, I can't do this or whatnot, but being able to just at least just be like, I know it's going to try and feel overwhelming, but just at least now I know I'm just going to move through it one task at a time, and then eventually it will be over. And I think that those conversations with people with other problems and to see how they navigate it maybe gives you at least a tool belt to be able to do so. Now, saying you don't have a problem, saying that like that's not that big of a deal, that's some of the stuff we were talking about earlier, where it just, if you sit there and you play down what people are struggling with, all that does is lead to isolation, depression, and suicide. And I don't think that's the answer. I think that making sure that you can at least just know that you're going to be okay and you're not done. Yeah. And being able to continue to work those problems. And this past weekend was a great example that I got to even talk to my kids about. It's like, I had this much stuff to do, so I just took a bite at it at a time and gave myself enough time to do it, and just accepted that it was going to be a lot of work, but that's all it was. And things are going to hit the fan. I remember talking to my staff before the event. It was this big Roth conference, so it's all these really rich guys that are there for an investor conference. And we were serving 3,000 people espresso drinks, and I was like, we're doing a mobile cart. There will be leaks. There will be a power outage. There will be something we can't expect, and we will be okay. Because the number one thing when all that stuff happens, if they look to you and they see you're calm and everything's fine, it'll be fine. Yeah. And that's exactly what happened, and we were okay. So the problems were there. The mindsets were different.
Yeah. One thing I've worked with clients to set up is we often have systems for things like business, but they're not our own life. And there's times where, like, if you're sick, the first thing you need to do is feel better. There's no point trying to plan how you're going to run the marathon or do the next workout or like make the next business or whatever. The first thing is get well. So like recognize where you're at. But then rather than being reactive and getting into a situation and trying to, you know, grasp for the rope, the life vest, is setting up, have someone in front of you who has done more, but then also have someone who is behind you a little bit, so that you have the reach up where you go tell the person your problems, and you're like, I'm $10,000 in debt. And they go, I'm $1 million in debt. And you go, oh, wow, I don't feel as bad now. And they bring you up, but then you're also, because if you just go that way, you'll constantly look up and feel down on yourself. But if you pause and help someone else, again, your problems don't feel as bad because they're struggling with something you've already accomplished.
I love that.
And actually systematizing and having that kind of set in your life is something helpful.
That's great. Yeah, I love that. I've accidentally...
Yeah.
What's up?
All right, let's go a little rapid fire.
Okay.
So any daily habits or weird routines that keep you sane or at least functional?
I watch what I eat. I make sure that if I ever start feeling that brain fog, just getting up and walk around and be outside. Like those are really important. But yeah, I mean, I don't have the millionaire mornings that people have, but I do have, I wake up, I definitely, like, I read my Bible, I exercise, I ice bath, run my dog, and get outside right away. Like those are like just some things that are not work related right at the very beginning of the day. And then just attack as many tasks as I can that are rapid fire, just to be able to get that momentum up. And then by lunch, usually that's when I'll head to the gym and actually lift, and then end the day with being a lot more kid focused. So it's like I have a regimented thing that I do on a regular basis, and those really help out.
Getting into the task, do you go eat that frog mentality?
A little bit, yeah.
So if you don't know, eat that frog is do the hardest task first, because anything after that is going to seem easy.
And most of the time, most of the time that hardest task is a conversation or an email or something staff related or landlord. Yes, I usually try to, if within reason, because usually I'll be up early enough that I have to wait a little bit until some people wake up. But yeah, usually I'll try and eat that frog.
Yeah, it's interesting. That works for some people and not for others. Some people need to get the easy tasks, like making the bed, doing the simple things to build momentum, and some people want to hit that first so that everything feels easy.
Yeah, it's a hybrid where it's like I'll get into my warehouse and I'll see what the big task is. I'll put that there, see when I can do it. And then if it's the first thing, then I at least just itemize. So right when I'm done with that, I write off of it to be able to order labels, so it's just like eat that frog and and then just like, and then you feel real good about yourself, and then you can accomplish anything. So yeah, so it's a hybrid.
What's something that looked successful from the outside but inside felt chaotic?
All of our merch. Every bit, like the amount of compliments we get on merch and design, like, how do you guys do it? I'm like, did you notice the typos on that last shirt? Like it is just me and my Adobe account and phone. Like, and so that's one thing where I'm thankful that the veil's never been lifted and people don't see it. There was one shirt, sincerely, I had too many F's in coffee, but luckily that was written upside down, so I did only like 30 sweatshirts of it and then quickly put it underneath. So if anybody has that, it's like a misprint of a penny. It's crazy. My friend said you should do that again because we give an F. And that's good. But anyway, yeah, merch I think is the biggest thing
Unexpected.
for me.
I like that.
Yeah.
If you were a guru, what would your thing be?
I don't think I know enough about gurus. Like what would be my mantra or my focus?
Yeah. Why would people want to listen?
I think it would have something to do with the tension of life and how you can actually process it and release it. And so I don't know enough about gurus how I would say it, but being able to turn the fearful things in life into humor would probably be
That's pretty good.
Is it? Is
That's
that guru
good.
enough?
I like that.
Okay.
So speaking of, do you ever see either gurus or influencers that have so much confidence that it makes you question why you doubt yourself?
Yeah.
And when I say like guru and influencer, not someone who's actually really superficial but presents as if they're deep and compassionate and they're doing their thing, and then people are like, oh yeah, wow.
I think I have enough of a distorted mentality that I'll look at what people do online on Instagram or whatnot, or my favorite thing is just the confidence of the guys that are at the gym. I'm sitting there at the urinal, they're in the bathroom at the sinks taking flex photos, and I'm like in the back like leaning over. I'm like, you are so confident to be able to just sit there with your baby muscles and just flex in the mirror that I almost envy you because of the fact that like I'm too self-aware and too self-critical that I wouldn't be able to do that. But I think in a roundabout way to be able to answer, like when I see those gurus and everybody that are so confident, I am envious of how much they don't care what others think, or at least how much and then how important it is for us to be able to see other people do that for us. That even if they're being idiots, at least like it shows us that we can do something without the concerns of criticism as much. When someone's so self-critical like I have been, when I've dealt with hecklers and Yelp reviews, like every career I've done has gotten a lot of external opinions. So I like what they do, even if I don't think what they're doing is great. I'm like, you know what? I appreciate the boldness and stuff like that, because there's a bravery with that I don't have, or a delusionment, whatever.
Either way, it works.
6 to 1, half a dozen the other.
Okay, what would you tell yourself at the start of your entrepreneurship journey if you think you would have listened?
You think that your work ethic is going to be the thing that carries you through, but it won't be. If you overwork a problem, all that's going to do is exhaust you. If you intelligently approach a problem with that same work ethic, it'll be a multiplier. So don't think that you're just going to sit there and throw more hours at something and have it grow. I think that you need to rely upon other people and humbly understand that work ethic is a tool, but it's not everything. So that's for me.
Wow. Yeah. More isn't necessarily better. So what's one thing you would want other men to know about the journey of being a dad, an entrepreneur, a husband?
Being strong is okay. Being strong is good. And being strong doesn't need to be loud, aggressive, and in your face. Doesn't need to be anything like an alpha male. Sometimes being strong is quiet. And that kind of quiet strength is going to heal the people around you and support them in a way that God made you to be, that the world doesn't celebrate as much, and that's okay. I think that's what I would tell them.
Yeah. People are drawn to that sense of calm and safety.
You have that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you do. You allow pauses to exist in our conversation, whereas I fill them like crazy. Yeah. I
like that.
Yeah, because I think that unfortunately there's been a lot of people out there that have used masculinity, like the Harvey Weinstein and stuff like that. It's evil. It's horrible, and it's abusive. And so a lot of people have lashed out to hate that. But I think that the men in the world that use that strength to be able to love their wives, be there for their kids, like it's great.
Yeah, I like that. 2 more. What's something you've picked up from someone else's journey that stuck with you?
A lot of things. I'll use Josh Burns as an example. He's a guy that owns Bear Coast with me, and so I'm the founder, and then eventually he and I now co-own it together. And there's been a vilification I've had when I've been frustrated with him, just because 2 guys trying to run a company feels like a married couple, and you're going to butt heads sometimes. But one of the biggest things that I've learned, because he's gone through a lot more trauma and a lot more catastrophe in his life than I have, and I think one of the biggest things that I've learned from him is to be able to still approach work, energy, and all these things with a tinge of joy, more so than I would. I think that I would come at it with stress, concern, and worry like it's a problem to solve, where sometimes I would see him show up to the same issues as if it was a game to play. And And I appreciated that about him. And he's never said anything like that, but I think that that's one thing that I've learned from the guy that I co-own with.
I love that you went really personal on that question instead of reaching for a Tony Robbins or a...
Oh, those are easy too.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
No, but I love that you went personal, because I obviously also know Josh, and there is an energy that is very different to you, but is captivating and draws people in just the same, but for a different reason.
Sure.
And I think that's
yeah,
really
he's
cool.
different. He's got a different worldview, different mindset, and it's been the best for me. Because if I had someone that was just exactly like me, I would show up and be like, "I'm stressed about this," and then the other person would be like, "I also am stressed about this." It wouldn't work.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, "I'm going fishing."
That's exactly it. And like, I'm like, "You're going to Amsterdam again? Fine, I'll run the business." Just kidding.
Is there someone in your life that when they ask how you are, you don't respond with the generic, "I'm good, thanks"?
You. Yeah, I feel comfortable talking to you about it. And there's a couple other, that was one of the bigger things as I was talking about that Laguna Beach experience. I looked around and I realized I didn't have a swath of guys to be able to lean upon that would actually understand where I'm coming from. So there's a couple other guys, just a friend of mine named Bob, Peter. Unfortunately, there have been seasons when my identical twin brother and we would lean into each other, but he and I are in different stages of life that sometimes I think we'll check in more so about family. But yeah, you and others like that have seen me go through stress and seen not like the worst of me, but like, and then come out the other end and stuff. It's a lot more comforting to see people stick around you, you know?
Right.
No, they're not going to take off. So yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because you feel this need to respond with, "I'm good, thanks." You know, whether it's a stranger or people you trust. And it's important to realize that that circle that you answer genuinely is going to be smaller than you think. You know, especially as a kid growing up, you're like, "Oh, I'm going to have these best friends and share everything," and I tend to overshare, and you get these like weird reactions from people, and so you shut it down more and more, to the point where I wasn't saying it to anyone. I would just say, "Yeah, I'm good, good, good," and I think a lot of guys do that.
Because of the reactions that people get, or like one of the reasons, like there's my brother and a couple friends is just like they've tried to start businesses, and they haven't worked, and they're successful in their lives and they're doing great. But so when I tried to be able to previously, when I've talked about my challenges, they'd be like, "Yeah, but you're making it work."
Right.
And then so they'd see only the things that they don't have and not understand the challenges necessarily.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily true anymore, but there's been certain times where that's happened,
Yeah, it's important. At least find one person, that will just sit and listen. I'll give you advice. I'll tell you you're wrong, unless they need to. Well, thanks for tuning in. If you like today's session, our chat, pass it on to a mate and tell him you love him. We'll be back with more chats and catch you next Tuesday.
All right.
Thanks for tuning in. If you like today's show, pass it on to a mate and tell him you love him. We'll be back with more chats, and I'll catch you next Tuesday.